I just watched a video from Foster the Meeple where they kind of basically said that they're mostly stepping away from the channel. Maybe they'll do a video a month, maybe not, we'll see. They might jump back into things, they might not, but it kind of sounded like they're mostly done. And it made me realize that 2025, granted this video's in 2026, but like early 2026, it made me realize that 2025 is very much a big year of burnout for content creators. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from YouTube. Dear Lord, I should start again. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Not from YouTube. Wow. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And I don't know where this video goes. This video might be a member-only video, Patreon, Ko-Fi, all of that. It might be a coffee chat video, which is a series that I film and then they go up 6 months down the road or a year down the road. Or it may just be a regular channel video that goes up, you know, whenever. For the sake of, I guess, in case it is a coffee chat video, I like to say that, I like to say when those are filmed, because it's fun. This is being filmed January 10th, 2026. Maybe this goes up in a week, maybe it goes up in 6 months, maybe it goes up on members only. I honestly don't know. I don't have any script for this one. And I never have a script for my videos, but I do usually have... Whoops, that was shaking the camera. Whoops, sorry, 1 second. This is really uncomfortable. This wasn't supposed to be like this. I do usually have this, a sheet of paper attached to the camera. This one, though, is not for Foster Meeple. This is actually, ironically, this is for supporting the Dice Tower, because the Dice Tower is consistent and there and present, and they're an asset to the hobby in many ways. And so I just filmed that video, and now that's my notes for that. And I was like, you know what? I guess we're going to film 2 back-to-back videos about content creators. Although this is not about Foster the Meeple. This video is not about Foster the Meeple. Foster the Meeple, Jeff and Jamie. I've been watching them for a very long time. I've appreciated their content. I always thought they added something different to the space, and the way that almost their banter and their dynamic was one of the driving things that made me appreciate their content. It was the thing that I always say that to be effective in the content creator space, you either have to be different or better. One of those two things. So either do what's being done and do it better, or do something that's not being done. And Jeff and Jamie, in addition to being good, the thing that they did that was different was their dynamic. The banter between the two of them was, I don't think anyone else out there had that same vibe. Every individual has their own individual vibe, but they had something different there. And I've appreciated their content for years, and it's kind of shocking to see a channel with like 30,000 subscribers be like, hey, yeah, we're kind of done now. But it's not the first time it's happened in 2025. There's been a lot of burnout in 2025, and I'm only going to talk about the ones that I'm only going to talk personally about the ones that have been more public about it. It's not my job to share other people's personal struggles or challenges or all that. That's for them. But I will talk a bit about those that have talked about publicly, like, you know, stepping back from the channel, things like that. And there's been a lot. There's been a lot this year specifically, and I always consistently say that content creation, people start it because they're passionate about the hobby. Well, content creation in board games. This applies to content creation in general, but mostly content creation in board games. People start it because they are passionate about the hobby. And then, in order to continue it, there has to continue to be passion, or money. Money definitely helps when you have a hard day. But there has to be some sort of drive in place that keeps people going. Speaking of money, this is an excellent time, an excellent natural segue to talk about our channel sponsor, Allplay. We'll get back to the video in a second, but first, Allplay. Allplay is a channel sponsor starting in 2026, and they have a lot of things happening. At this point, if I knew this video was going up next week, I would tell you about their Mountain Goats Kickstarter campaign, because they have Mountain Goats Legacy as well as, oh my gosh, what's it called? Where did I put it? The box, Enchanted Ivy. Oh, I put it behind the set. Enchanted Ivy. They have Enchanted Ivy and Mountain Ghost Legacy. But also, I don't know if this video goes up down the road. So, in case it does go up down the road, I'll also mention that go to allplay.com and you can find a bunch of things. Particularly, all of their games are on allplay.com, as well as all of their partners' games. There are a lot of games that you can get for lower combined shipping rates. Make sure to go and check them out, because many people don't realize that by going to allplay.com, there's a lot more games you can get than just Allplay games. And with that, we're going to go back to the conversation around content creators and burnout. Because, again, I have no script, I have no notes, I have nothing. I just know 2025, it kind of, watching Foster the Meeple step away from content creation was like one more straw that made me just want to talk about it. Because from the channels that have been public about it, I know Shelf Clutter, I almost said Shelf Side, but that's not the same. Shelf Clutter stepped away from content creation in 2025. Adam talked about he's been feeling that he's been prioritizing too much how much work goes into shelf side relative to how much actual money there is there. It's just something he put on himself this pressure to do it, and it became this thing he has to do, and that started interfering with his personal life. This is all stuff he's talked about, and so he just decided to step back from content creation, which is incredibly sad. I think what he did was an asset to the hobby, but it's an asset that wasn't paying well enough and was a ton of pressure, and the passion at some point started to become less of a driving force. The money wasn't enough of a driving force, and so he eventually stepped back. Foster and Meeple, again, I can only go into what they've talked about, but they talked about how they want to be on the internet less, that it was becoming more of a thing that they were pushing themselves to do. That when they started the channel, they had this list of things they wanted, and they got all those things, and now the driving force part of it is gone. And so they feel incredibly accomplished with what they've done, but it's become a chore and a burden and not something they are passionate about the same way. This is something they've talked about for a while. It's something that does happen to channels is, and this is something that All You Can Board talked about a while ago. All You Can Board is another channel, great channel. They have not stepped away. If anything, it's the other way around. They kind of took a semi-hiatus for like 6 months, and then now they're diving back into it. Although again, now is relative depending on when this video goes up. But they talked about how for a lot of channels, as you decide what this thing that was a passion, start off as a passion, you got excited, you got into it, and then you have to kind of make a decision, where is this going for you? What is it doing? And some people lean into, how can I make this my full-time job? How can I make this something that I actually do? People quit jobs to do their channel full-time. Multiple people I know say they won't quit their jobs, and because they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing this channel, but it's just a side thing for me. And then suddenly fast forward 6 months and they end up quitting their job to do it full time because you get sucked into it, and there becomes this tipping point where you're like, this could be my life. I could talk about board games. This thing I started as a side project, I can do it full time. If I just pull all of these levers exactly correctly, I can do this. And I don't have to do whatever it is that you were doing before that is probably less passion driven. But the problem with flipping that switch, this is what All You Can Board talked about correctly, the problem with flipping that switch is, for most people, flipping that switch to a certain extent changes what and how you're doing it. If you got into this channel, into this hobby, because if you got into talking board games as a hobby because you're passionate about talking about board games, and suddenly you have to do 3 sponsored videos a week in order to make this your full-time job, for some people that can take the magic out of it. Because you didn't do this to talk about sponsored content. You didn't do this so that you can cash a check and be like, here's this game that you can go back on crowdfunding. You did it because you were excited about a game and you wanted to share it, and that can be a despair, kind of a contrast between what you gave up your job to do something you're passionate about, but then you end up changing the passion in a way that makes it no longer recognizable to why you started. And that's a risk. Not everyone does that. Not everyone has that arc, but that's certainly a risk that many have had. And I will say on my end, personally, I've certainly danced with that arc. The decision that I am going to prioritize Board Game Co. I want Board Game Co. to be something that I care about, something that I do, something I'm diligent about. There are trade-offs that come along with that. Because I mentioned the shelf side already. Obviously, Foster the Meeple. What's it called? Who else is publicly? I'm trying to think. Not to imply that every person that's not listed is someone I'm talking to privately about their issues, but people struggle with this. I talk to people all the time, content creators, and the issues we all struggle with, because we all struggle with different things. And we all have different things that weigh on us in different ways, whether it's the pressure of to play new games that we don't always necessarily want to, whether it's sponsored content that we don't feel the same way about, whether it's that timeline where you have to make a video, whether it's the comments that you get that kind of suck the fun out of it, because comments, there's almost always, most content creators have 99% positive comments that are communities that are engaging, that reward them for doing what they're doing, that make you excited to continue to do it. But also, almost all of us have 1 to 5% of people that are there to say something negative and stupid, and just to not be someone that's supportive, but to see someone that drags you down. And those comments, unfortunately, it's human nature, those comments stick with you more. The person who's like, love what you do, is nice. The person who's like, why are you even doing this? Like you did X wrong, or you're a shill for this publisher, or whatever it is that's critical and negative. Those comments, from a natural human emotion standpoint, they stick with you more. And so again, it sucks some of the fun out of the thing that you decided to make your passion, to make your life. It sucks some of the fun out of it. So obviously, again, mentioned a few channels already. Carly from Board Game Buzz, she's been public about the fact that she had a lot of stress around the channel this year. And again, it's the kind of stress that when you tell people, it sounds like, really? This is like your first world problem going on? Oh no, you have too many review copies to cover? Woe is me. But like, yes, it is a stressor. It may not be a stressor that everyone can appreciate, but it's a stressor when you're like, okay, I have these games that came in. if I talk about them in 6 months, no one cares anymore, and the publishers are upset. If I talk about them right now, that's amazing, but that means I have to play all these games right now, and the way the timing worked out in my personal life, I'm dealing with this on my end that wasn't really planned. I had to do this here, I had to deal with this new job, have a new kid, move, whatever it is that you're dealing with, and suddenly there's all these other games on the shelf that you have to get to before they're no longer relevant, because the space moves so fast that 6 months down the road means sometimes you're no longer relevant. Sometimes that video is like, okay, well, everyone else talked about that game 6 months ago. Where were you then? And so you have this pressure from the audience, pressure from the publisher, and then lots of times the audience will sit there, the supportive parts of the audience, because there are supportive, the vast majority of the audience is supportive. A lot of the supportive parts of the audience will say things like, oh no, you're putting too much pressure on yourself. You don't need to talk about the game. Slow down. It's not like, don't worry so much. But the reality is that these things do matter. When you put up that video 6 months later about a game everyone's talked about already, the views don't creep in as much, and the publisher's not as happy, and so that pressure is there. It's not imagined. It's not coming from nowhere. And so Carly has dealt with pressure in the board game space and a degree of burnout, stress, what you call it, what you will. I had a harder 2025 in general, a great 2025 at a personal level. Like, my life is great. I'm very blessed is so overused. I'm very fortunate. And I'm very happy with my life in so many ways. But 2025 was a year that I struggled a lot with content creation. For the first time, it started to feel like something I was forcing myself to do as opposed to something that I was always excited. And I had to do a lot of introspection and changes. In fact, I filmed a video of some of the changes I'm making. That video hasn't gone up yet because I always have videos in the backlog, which does mean sometimes time is out of sorts on the channel. But like I've dealt with a lot of burnout in 2025. I dealt with a lot of feeling the need to push myself to do things and not feeling quite as excited about why I was doing those things. And after a lot of introspection, I was able to figure out how to recapture a lot of the joy. And I'm not saying that everything's amazing and hunky-dory. I mean, again, I'm very fortunate. My life is very fortunate. But in terms of the burnout aspect, I'm not saying that there's nothing left. But I do think that I've managed to remove a lot of the pressure that was driving things and to pivot and find... I kind of was able to look at the stuff that I was dealing with and separate between what are the things that I enjoy that I'm going to keep doing the way I'm doing, what are the things that I need to minorly tweak how I do them in order so that I don't feel like I'm forcing myself, and what are the things that I have to let go of entirely. And I've made a lot of those changes already. I would say that right now, as of January 10th, 2026, right now I'm feeling... I think if my burnout, if we're going to quantify, if my burnout issues were like a 5 out of 10, because they never got too crazy, but if they're a 5 out of 10, they're down to a 1 out of 10, my burnout issues. Like, there's still a little bit there in the background. Like, it's not perfectly solved, but I've made significant progress on my end, so I'm happy about that. But after running straight for 5-6 years, I got to a point that 2025 was a year that was hard for me. 2025 was a year of pushing myself and feeling more down about things, and there was some mental adjustments I had to make and some practical adjustments I had to make, and they've helped a lot, and I'm very happy about that. But it's a lot of burnout in 2025. It's a lot of people who started around the same time. All the 4 people I mentioned have started around the same time, give or take a year or two, and at a certain point in their journey started to feel that pressure of, why am I doing this? Do I want to keep doing this? What changes do I have to make to keep doing this? Part of why this video isn't necessarily something that's going up next week is sometimes I worry I talk about this stuff too much. But I do sometimes find talking to the camera therapeutic. So I enjoy the conversations I have. Part of why I have a coffee chat, I don't think I've ever said this to you, but part of why I have a coffee chat series on the channel is... a big part of it is it gives me the opportunity to talk to the camera, to get things off my chest, to have that conversational aspect. But it does so in a way where I'm taking the time crunch off it. I'm not doing it right now in a way that comes across as, hey, here's this thing that's bugging me and I want to talk to you about it. I'm like, no, here's this thing that I'm going to talk about, and it'll go live when it goes live. 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever it goes live, it goes live. It's just a video in the vault that could be interesting to talk about. And hey, maybe it's fun to 3 years from now see a video pop up talking about like Foss and the Meeple. Oh my gosh, this is filmed when they stopped doing YouTube. Or what do you mean stopped doing YouTube? They came back and started doing it stronger than ever. Who knows what the future holds? But it also might go up next week. I don't know. But again, part of why I don't know if it's going up next week is because I dealt with burnout in 2025. I feel that to a certain extent, maybe this topic is less interesting. Maybe I'm going on about the same thing, and some of you might be super invested in these kinds of behind the scenes what's the word? Reminiscing is the wrong word. Ruminating. The behind the scenes ruminating that goes on in my head. Some of you might be interested in that. Others might be like, hey, we're here for the board games and the board game reviews and the top 10 list, and could you stop putting out a video every month and a half about challenges that content creators face? Woe is them. Like, I don't know the individual people watching this and their reaction to these kinds of things, and honestly, I think both of those reactions are super valid. I think super valid. I think it's super valid to be invested in that content creator who you've been watching for X number of years and be curious about what goes through their minds when these things happen. I also think it could be super valid to just want that content creator to talk about board games, and sure, different videos will always pop up on the channel because that's what I do, but like the same old thing, like at a certain point, let it go, man. And so like, I think both viewpoints are super valid, and so I never know how to fully engage with like catering to everyone. You can't. So I just try to make the best decisions I can, but part of that means sometimes filming when I have thoughts and opinions I want to talk about, and then holding off necessarily when it goes live. Content creation, in my opinion, board game content creation, is always something that I have viewed as both the best job and the most challenging job. And to be very clear, to save everyone a lot of time, the most challenging job, it's a joke. Meaning, I'm not comparing this to, in no way am I comparing it to actual challenging jobs. But I guess, so the most challenging job is the wrong terminology. It's both the best job, and it can be a mentally draining job. Let's just stick with mentally draining. There's so many more challenging jobs. There's something about this process, especially when it's passion driven, especially when the money isn't worth it, when you're pushing yourself because you're like, hey, I get some money out of this is fun, I keep doing it because I want to, but also there's all these things that need to happen that I need to do. There's something about this job that makes a lot of people stop doing it. Whether it's the pay, whether it's the job itself, whether it's the combination of job and pay, but a lot of people stop. A lot of people get into it, and then the voices change, the people stop, things just don't stay the way they always were when they started. And something that All You Can Board talked about as well is you kind of have two pathways. You take the pathway of I want to make this my job, which attaches certain pressures to it, or you take the pathway of I just want to be me, which is great, but also can pivot how you engage. Like after doing that, they barely did any videos for 6 months because they decided to just be them, and that meant that it was a backseat to their life. And there's always trade-offs. There's a new channel, newish channel, not really new, but newish channel called Big Pasty right now. One of several channels that I've really been enjoying a lot recently. And they've done an incredible job of managing to provide a unique voice, be themselves, be unique. I hope they go far in this space. But I also worry that I think that people that take that approach often don't stick around because it's not worth it. They stick around as long as it's convenient, and then when the going gets tough, there's not that pressure in place, and things change. And I hope Big Pasty stays around for a very long time. Again, you might be watching this video 3 years in the future. You might be watching it next week. I don't know. I have constantly said that I love what I do. And I do. I have also constantly said that one of the reasons I look up to Tom from the Dice Tower, Tom Vassell from the Dice Tower, is because he's been doing this for 20 years-ish. And it's managed to be something that he keeps on doing. In a world where most people who've been doing it that long, first of all, most people aren't doing it that long. And then to a lot of them that have, I think that for me personally, most people who have been in this space for a very long time aren't people who I personally appreciate quite as much or quite the same way. And I'm not going to go into why. This is not an opportunity to dig on the things I don't like about certain content creators. And not personally, but things that I might not care for personally as far as following. Meaning, it's not that I have a personal issue with them, but things about their content might not resonate with me the same way. And sometimes I think there is a correlation between doing this for such a long time and becoming someone whose content I don't appreciate quite as much. Versus Tom from the Dice Tower, the Dice Tower in general, they've always managed to continuously be there, continuously iterate, continuously change, all while doing this for as long as they have. I saw a comment on Foster the Meeple's video that talked about, like, oh, this has been the big year of burnout, whatever it is, and they do think that this shows that the board game industry is, you know, changing. It's not the same as it once was. And I don't think that's the case. I don't think this is a reflection on the board game industry going downhill by any means. I think the board game industry is constantly changing, but I think it's very, very strongly positioned. There's certainly some degrees of individual burnout people might have, both as content creators and as individuals in the hobby. If you were on a crowdfunding run for who knows how long, and this is the year where you got burned a few times, you might feel that this is the year where it's taking it out on you. There's always going to be changes and things that make it less so. Maybe you might be someone who didn't find a lot of new games in 2025 that you loved. And so you might look fondly on 2020 whatever and think those are the great years of board games, and 2025 is just, you know, nothing new that's useful or good. But others have found tons of great games and they might feel differently. So I don't think this is a reflection on the hobby itself. I think that there's ebbs and flows to life, regardless of which side of the industry you're on. Sometimes as a player, there's ebbs and flows to how much enjoyment you're getting out of things. And sometimes as a person in the industry, whether a designer, publisher, content creator, whatever, there's ebbs and flows as well. We're all human. And especially when we make things our job, especially when that's the case, that puts a different kind of pressure. Your own personal pressure might be you backed too many games and they all started showing up, and now you're starting to realize that these things that were exciting opportunities have now started to become homework assignments, and that might have ruined some of your love for crowdfunding. But similarly, a content creator might have something similar where this thing that they got into, they started talking about games because they're passionate about them, and suddenly fast forward 4 years, and now they're talking about games because they have to in order to keep up. There's pivots, there's ebbs and flows, and we are all constantly trying to find our balance. This is true in everything. This is not just related to board games. This is not just related to content creators and board games. But for me, on a personal level, seeing multiple people within the industry step back from the industry this year, or just how they engage with the industry this year, it has certainly made me even more mindful that prioritizing how I engage with content creation is just as important as engaging with it at all. I have consistently and constantly said that I love what I do. And I hope to be doing this 10 years down the road. Not because it pays the bills, but because I like it. I like it, and I just want to constantly find the healthy way to do it. I want to find the way that works for me, that works for my audience, and keeps this as something that is a continuous source of joy, and continuously something that adds value to my life, because it has done so much for my life already, and I hope it continues to be that way over the next 20 years. Anyways, I don't have a takeaway on this video. This, like I said already, is me just kind of doing my own little therapy session to the camera after watching another somewhat big channel say that they're kind of stepping back from YouTube. It's one of those like weird things. It reminds me of my own mortality in a way, but not in a death sense, but in a what YouTube could be for me, where things could go, how things could play out if they're handled differently or not handled at all. So it just makes me think, it's definitely something that's close to my heart, which is why I wanted to talk about it. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. Thank you to Foster the Meeple for all the content you've done over the years and the joy you've brought to others and the videos that I've watched that I've enjoyed. And to everyone else, I hope you have a good one.